I got a story to tell. This is a story that's kind of a follow up to the story of when I saw two Bigfoots. But this story was what made me absolutely say I'm never going to northern Michigan again. Here's what happened. Got to give you a little bit of background on it. So this probably happened probably 2 years after the Bigfoot thing happened when they followed me back to my wife's family cabin, and it was probably about a group of 15 or 20 people there at the time during the Bigfoot incident, and then there was the same group of people there. I think it was the 4th of July. I'm pretty sure it was the 4th of July weekend. So I think it was 2019 because I haven't been up there since 2019. And I'm an avid, absolutely avid ATV rider. And I'll show you pictures so you know that I'm not lying. I mean, at one time I had 6 ATVs. So, and I'll definitely show you pictures. But here's what happened. On the street that we live on, or that their cabin is on, there was a young couple who lived across the street and a little ways down. So I had met them probably 7 or 8 years prior, because at that time my kids were pretty young and they had young kids. And way out there, there's never any opportunity for kids to be able to play with other kids because there are no kids out there. So I guess they drove by and then they saw all these kids, so they wanted to come over. So the guy came over, him and his wife, and they had maybe a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a baby. So they came over, they saw all the ATVs. The guy had UTVs and ATVs and everything. So he was telling us about different trails that we hadn't been on yet that would take us from where we were just north of Gaylord, Michigan, to all the way to the bridge. So he was telling us about those trails and where the trailhead is and how to hit those trails and things. So we were just having a random conversation. So during that conversation, his wife reluctantly started to open up a little bit about some of the going-ons out there in northern Michigan where they live. So she said that they've been having some strange things happen and during the night, and that she had actually taken pictures of these giant wolf prints that were all over their driveway and around their window. So she had sent those to the DNR, and the DNR said, they basically said they didn't know what they were, but if they had to guess, it would be a giant timber wolf, something 300 or 400 pound timber wolf. So at that time, I was actually thinking Michigan Dogman, but I didn't want to say anything because she didn't say anything. So I just left it alone. So give me 8 years later. So the entire family were at the cabin for the holiday. So we're sitting around drinking, having a good time. And, the night comes and it's super dark. We got a fire going, so it's all good. Now, mind you, I have been going up there for 20 years at this point. Hadn't seen a thing, nothing in 20 years. Hadn't had any run-ins with anything, probably bear. We would see smaller black bear, maybe 200-pound black bears and things like that. We'll walk across the property, a lot of deer, small foxes, so no large predators at all. So this night, we're all at the fire, just like normal. All of a sudden, we hear howls. And I have never in my entire life heard a wolf howl at all. I'd heard coyotes and stuff up there, but I had never heard a howl. So we're all sitting down, drinking around the fire. And we started to hear these howls. So it was like one howl, and then in another place, another howl. And then in another place, another howl. So we're all kind of like, what the hell is that? Because they've been coming up there probably 30 years. So everybody is pretty much like, what the hell is that? We've never heard anything like this. So it was what made it weird was how loud these howls were. And yeah, just the around us is nothing. So you have to kind of guesstimate how far away something is. So I would have to say that these things were coming from probably half mile away, but they were clearly coming from different directions and seemed like they were like coming together. But I mean, they were loud. So we're all just, we kind of get quiet and we're listening. And, somebody pulls out their cell phone and they're trying to record the sound. Because it was just strange. So the next thing you heard coyotes. And you heard coyotes sounded like sounded like it was 30 coyotes, probably somewhere in that same half mile away, somewhere around that vicinity. But it was just more coyotes than you'd ever heard. And it was just, they were making these noises. And it was just super loud because they make a cackling sound and a slight screaming sound. But I'd heard those things before, but I never heard them. I would never heard that many, or what I would consider to be that big a group of coyotes together. But the coyotes got more and more and more frantic, and so we're all just mesmerized by the sound. Like, what is going on? All of a sudden, we hear a sound. And the way that I've described the sound every time I told this story, it sounded like a gorilla, a man, and a lion, all at the same time. I know hearing this that may not make sense, but that is the only way I can describe it, because it sounded like all three of those things put together. And it's really what it sounded like. And it was the loudest, most aggressive, most fearful sound you could ever imagine. This, and then there was another and another, and it sounded like you were in Jurassic Park. I mean, because it was a combination. It was a roar, and it was sounded as if it could speak. And it's all I can say is those three things: a gorilla, a man, and a lion is what it sounded like, and it was absolutely petrifying. At that point, we were frozen in fear, and it was clear that we were at least a half mile away. And you could still hear the coyotes yipping, 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 and you heard those sounds, and it was multiple. And I mean, this was like nothing. I could not begin to tell you the level of fear that I felt personally, and I know everybody else felt that level of fear. But the next thing that happened took the cake. All of a sudden, you heard those coyotes yelping and yelping, and it was just and then it was the coyotes were literally being slaughtered. And when I mean slaughtered, I mean slaughtered. You could actually hear ripping. You could hear ripping, and it's a half a mile away. The sound was, unlike anything that you couldn't put these sounds together and make it more frightening, because those coyotes you could hear them literally being ripped apart. And I know it sounds weird, but it's like you rip a sheet. You could literally hear that, and you could hear the yelping and the yelping, and it went on for probably 5 minutes, and it would just be roar, and the bones breaking. Everything you could imagine. It was so scary. In unison, probably 12 to 15 people who were around the fire all got up and walked into the cabin without saying a word to each other. It was like the fear had overcome us all at the same time, to the same degree, where everybody felt that we were in imminent danger, even though we knew we were far from it because we could kind of tell. But we all had an internal instinct and feeling that made us all pretty much stand up in unison and walk into the cabin. So after about 5 minutes, nothing. You didn't hear anything else. No coyotes, no anything. That right there was the last time that I went up to northern Michigan after that, because it sounded like a scene from Jurassic Park. And it sounded as if the coyotes were being torn limb from limb, and you could hear the tearing. You could literally hear the tearing. The next year, all those trails that we had been riding for the previous 20 years up north, every single one of those trails were closed down to ATVs and everything else. So there's no more riding on any of those trails anywhere around there. The DNR has signs out, do not ride, no motor vehicles, no anything. So we pretty much had no place to ride anymore. I wasn't going back after hearing that at all, and then having the couple years before the Bigfoot incident. After that, there was no way I was going back anyway, but you can check it out. And I've got a picture of the trail map that once I figure out YouTube a little better, I'll figure out how to attach or pictures of the trail map so you can actually see, and I'll circle it right where we were. And then you can go online and you can check and see that every one of those trails all through there, it's all completely closed down now. You cannot ride there at all. And I'm a firm believer in when you're up there and they close something down, to absolutely keep away and stay away from it. On a side note, here's something that you can check out for yourself. There's a story of a guy who was up there right in this same area, probably within 5 miles of my wife's family cabin. And this guy went missing for 90 days. So check out the story. It was in the paper also. And because he was swimming, and he was found in Pennsylvania. 90 days later, his family thought he was dead. They had a funeral, all kinds of stuff. They thought he was dead, and he was found in Pennsylvania 90 days later with those same swimming trunks and everything on. And he told a story, and he said he had been abducted by Dogmen and marched in some underground caverns all the way to Pennsylvania, where at some point there was another human there, and the other human died, and they just let him go, and he ran, he flagged, he had no idea where he was. He flagged somebody down, and he was rescued. Check out the story. You can find that story in the paper, and it's in the exact same area that I'm talking about. That is the reason why I will not go to northern Michigan anymore, especially when you're off the beaten trail in the woods. Then that's the story, and it's the truth, and it's not gonna change. But check out that story that will verify what I'm telling you. Jurassic Park is in northern Michigan.